We are very fortunate to have two respondents here tonight who one person in person and one person on Zoom. So I think what we might do is we'll start, Lorraine, with you. But before we get to Lorraine, I want to find out if Emma, are you on the Zoom? Can we hear you? There's Emma.
Hello, everyone.
So Emma Tamlin is currently working with the City of Toronto on a very exciting eco roof project. And Emma, you'll have a moment to talk about that a little bit later. Emma has also been working with urban agriculture for a number of years in other contexts. And here in the room, we have Lorraine Johnson, who needs no introduction, but I think we all know what a wonderful writer and advocate for urban agriculture. And there is a question here already about livestock, so we're going to bring that in. Okay, so Lorraine, I'm going to hand this over to you now. You have some questions.
Thanks so much. Can everyone hear me with the microphone? Is that okay? Well, first off, I want to say thank you to the presenters, Agnès and Giulia, for those wonderful presentations. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I hope we get lots of questions. I feel very honored and privileged to be able to ask some questions up here before we open it up. And also just to sort of offer some general observations on some of the ways that the work that you two are doing connects with some work in Toronto, and maybe some similarities, but also some differences. And I'm hoping that people who are here today will also offer some of those comparisons. And I guess one of the things that strikes me right off the bat has to do with some things around language, actually, and referring to ecological services. And there's certainly some debate that is happening around terms like that kind of center humans, and that somehow the environment exists in the service of humans. So there's also some, I would say in the Toronto context, the term green infrastructure is one that comes up a lot, and thinking about the ways that, we're all used to sort of gray infrastructure in the idea of, the built, bridges and sewer pipes and that sort of thing. But the way that urban agriculture and other, all sorts of other innovations can provide green infrastructure that leads to resilience in cities. So, in the Toronto context, I would say that there is quite and perhaps it's something I'm looking for because it's an area that I work in, but I would say that there has been a huge increase in interest in the connections, and this has to do with, ecological services or green infrastructure, the connections between food production and support for pollinators, for example, or creation of habitat, and the way that those are not separate and the way that they lead to benefits. So I guess and also, okay, another example, so there's pollinators, but another example, the way that urban agriculture can connect with, for example, what is called food waste, but is obviously not waste. So I'm thinking about projects in Toronto, like some of the compost exchanges that exist, and the amazing community compost projects, like the one that Fiona Dirks did with getting community, like at a farm at the Burnham Thorpe Collegiate Farm, members of the community bring quote unquote food waste, which is then composted at the farm, and people are paid in market bucks, like $1 for the food that they contribute. It's not a waste, it's a contribution, and then they can community members can use those food bucks to buy food at the farm. So this sort of full life cycle connections between urban agriculture and other aspects of urban resilience. So I guess I would ask, I'm curious about this sort of, maybe not, linear, here are the benefits, here are the measurements, but a kind of a circular, some of the circular connections that you've observed in your work, in your very interesting work, both of you.
So I'll just let Giulia answer about the composting and things, because we have lots of things we've been working on with the students and companies. I would just try, because we were talking about it with so with Giulia, we just talked before about the fact that it's not ecological services, it's ecosystemic services. Because if you say ecological, you just have one side of it. But of course, ecosystem services are centered around humans, as the services we can bring from it, get from it. However, the conception of it is broader, in the sense that they are classified for production services, so cultural and social services and so on. And they, to be able to be here, you need to have a living and harmonious ecosystem. So whether it's for human consumption or not, to be able to get them, you have to have a healthy planet, and to include the whole range of things. I'm still thinking about the fact that I'm not sure where welfare, animal welfare is. However, I guess from cultural and social benefits for the human, you wouldn't be able to have animals suffering too much, because you would then have an impact on people. So I'm thinking that that's where this answers to it. As for the infrastructure, yeah, we also have a lot of, well, we have what we call in France la trame verte et bleue, which means blue and green network. So there's a lot of work being done on it, and lots of, I would say, urban planning. Yes. So Taufik would be better able to answer it. Which we're looking at the connections. So building a network where wildlife and other wildlife is maybe in a broader sense, including worms and creepy crawlies. So they have to be able to move from one place to the other. So whether you would have a direct path or stepstones to it. So yeah, we're also looking into it. And it's integrated in the policies. That's great.
Yeah. Yes. No, thank you for those questions. It's really interesting. I would like just to stress about ecosystem services that we are, myself and the other coordinator of the task on cultural ecosystem services, we are uncomfortable with this framework because it's like, but we both agree that is a way also to do multidisciplinarity research, because there are other researchers that more ecologists or biophysical point of view, so they can measure more the supporting services, regulating services. So it's a way to do multidisciplinarity and also to compare to other studies that mobilize this framework. So it's interesting in this sense. And also the systematic perspective, so to look more to the circularity, and we would like to improve this this kind of survey. Of course, also to stress the trade-off between services, because we focus more on make compost. So maybe, as you said, food waste, it's not waste, it's resources, but it's like an excuse. So I said, by like compost, so it's okay. But we have to think about in this systematic point of view, but also about the service and these services, because sometimes also compost, a survey on compost, on public compost on Paris, they demonstrate that the quality of this compost is not so not so good. So it's important also to combine practical good practices like compost and so on, but also the quality and the biophysical dimension of those services.
Yeah, and I'm struck by your slide about the concerns with urban agriculture, and that they're the same as the concerns around composting, pests, smell, that sort of thing.
And just to add something, we in France, starting from January next year, all public authorities will have to be able to provide a way for citizens to separate organic matter, organic waste from the others. So that means we're going to have lots of composting, and lots of associations or organisms are already trying to put in place, like I say, collective composting and so on. So we're going to have to work on the quality and the use of this compost afterwards.
Do you want to go to Emma, or I'll continue?
We've got time for another one.
Okay. Yeah, I also wanted to ask you again, it's sort of language based in the sense of Giulia, you were mentioning or in the surveys and the results, landscape appreciation. And I'm wondering if the kind of parallel here, and maybe, and also to ask you what exactly that means in the context of your survey. But here there's a lot of discuss very much in the current moment, a lot of talk about the ways that all aspects of tending the earth, whether it's, you know, nurturing food, nurturing habitat, the way that that earth tending connects us with nature. And in this context here, there's the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, where the calls to action, there are 93 specifically, but there's a framing statement about the need to reconcile with nature, and that is the you know, a call to view ourselves as humans in connection with nature, not separate from. And I'm wondering if that's one of the things that you have been finding, one of the if that's what you're getting at with the landscape appreciation. I'm wondering if that is part of it. And then also, Agnès, with the measuring that you were doing, the kind of metrics, how one of the central benefits of urban agriculture and food growing being the way that it connects us with natural processes and nature. How it's kind of some thoughts on how to measure it, and also if you've observed that, as or if you can even measure it with the work that you were doing.
Yes. So most of the studies on cultural ecosystem services, they consider also the aesthetic values of landscape. So it's like to score or just evaluate the level of if we like or don't like a landscape. So the aesthetic values, but we prefer to speak about landscape appreciation and not aesthetic values, because aesthetic values is like there is this kind of it's not too easy to explain, but it's more linked with the ancient definition of landscape. That landscape is seems that it's more linked to the aesthetic dimension. But now, since 2000, with the Landscape Convention, landscape is what we perceive by populations. So it's more linked by perception dimension and not aesthetic. So it's more because you can perceive also a landscape that you consider not so good or not beautiful. So you can perceive also not beautiful landscape. And I don't know if it's clear, but yeah. No, it's not that you can just score a low appreciation, but you can perceive also a landscape that is not so good or it's not so beautiful. It's not so clear. But of course, landscape appreciation is more that attribute a value of those landscapes. So it's, of course, if 1, it's not so good, and 10, it's really appreciated. But we prefer to talk about appreciation, not aesthetic values.
Were you finding, though, that this idea of a connection to nature, not as an aesthetic experience?
Yeah, it's not aesthetic. Okay. Thank you very much. It's not aesthetic experience, more it's like perception. So the connection with those landscape. Thank you very much. You understand better than me.
Okay, maybe at this point we'll go over to Emma. And Emma, you have some observations, questions you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me first and foremost. I wish I could have been there, but excited nonetheless. So yeah, my first question is similar to Lorraine's, but maybe a bit more contrasting in the sense of how do we communicate these benefits to unfamiliar audiences? And is the only way to attach a dollar value? How can we do it without always putting a dollar value on it, and instead doing what Lorraine is getting to, is that this intrinsic connection to nature that we're trying to instill in folks?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Would you like?
Okay. Yeah. I think for both questions, I'm just going to refer to the work. I have a PhD student who just validated her PhD in January, and she worked on co-designing an evaluation tool for urban agriculture for professional farms. And she really co-designed, and she did what we call a diagnosis of uses. It means she went to interview people who evaluate urban agricultural projects in France. She read all the documents that's been written for the call for projects and for the contest. And what came out of it was that 80% of indicators used today by different stakeholders are qualitative. They are not quantitative. You are not measuring things. You are really thinking, are there education services being done? Yes, no. No, not really sometimes measuring it. Today, most stakeholders really appreciate it qualitatively. And I think that's when you say, how do we communicate these benefits to experts, non-experts, they already do it. They don't need us to tell them how to evaluate. They are already doing it. So what they want from us is sometimes ways to make it more objective. And so what we really thought would be, we would try to create a tool which enable them to have expert advice to choose which indicators they're going to use. It's not, and maybe the other answer would be, well, what we try to do with when we make reports, which are not for scientific experts, but really these short reports, because if it's long, no one has the time to read it anyway, with a nice editing with pictures, and so you put in bold what the real messages are and so on. I think that's really a work vulgarization. It's really important, and we need to invest in it more. The more I work on this, and the more I find that it's important to be able to describe what we do with simple terms, and so easy to understand with examples and so on.
Okay.
Emma, did you have another question, comment?
If we have time, I can definitely ask one more. So you touched on it briefly in your presentation about like the negative perceptions of urban agriculture. And I was just wondering if through your surveys you came across any other like negative feedback as well, because a lot of it in the presentations was positive, because sometimes the negative feedback can really inform how we go about like our outreach and engagement. So what kinds of negative feedback did you receive, and how is that informing your work?
Yes, we, for example, at the end, I said that when we ask for if people would like to have micro farms close to their home, someone like 80% said no, because they are afraid about smell or use conflict or rats, animals. So the connection with nature, it's really a personal thing. So someone likes this connection, so they think that we can also develop different way the cities and connection with nature, like animals, plants, and so on. And others prefer to that the city, it's like concrete environment, and the project, it's best on the countryside, so it's outside the cities. And also someone say don't like this kind of project because they think that it's like individual experiences, like a family garden, or and they think that it's like appropriation of the cities for someone. And so, but the majority of respondents, they appreciate this kind of project and urban agriculture within the cities. So it's more positive response, but we have, of course, some negative also. Yeah. And it's important to understand that also for just things that we agree that it's really important to do a consultation and consultation with people before implement or develop a urban agriculture project. We saw that in Paris, some projects they are wait like 4 or 5 years, because there are associations of inhabitants that are against those projects for 2 reasons. One, because they are not implicated or involved in the consultation process, and also because those projects are invested like a natural space place, like the water conservatory. There are like ground, just grass with flowers and so on, pollinators, bird, and they prefer those landscape than urban agriculture farms. So it's with greenhouse. So it's for this reason, it's also these services of this kind of project. Yeah.
Ah, voilà.
Okay, well, actually, there is a question here that came from the audience earlier. Expanding green space in cities is now being recognized as a necessity. And so how do you define that green space? Is there a tension between urban agriculture and restoring or supporting biodiversity?
I think the example of Paris is difficult because there's not a lot of space that's free. There's not a lot of we don't have many brownfields. Well, maybe in just around in the suburbs, there are some spaces where there were some industries which have been disappearing, and there are initiatives that are being greening cities, and those are welcomed. But it's sometimes temporary, so they have to be moved. And some initiatives are disappearing. So you say that they are welcome in the city? Well, no, it's not. What was the term?
It's just that there's a tension between
Yeah, and we just maybe have to add that in some places there have been advocacies for the preservation of some urban gardens, which were supposed to be disappearing for temporary parking lots during building. Perfect. I guess all here will be happy to hear it. And as for biodiversity, well, so what I mean is that there's not so much green space that can be built here. And I've also heard or read, I don't remember, things about the fact that if you use all free spaces to put in urban agriculture, there is no space left for other creation. So should urban agriculture take the place of everything else in the free spaces of the city? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And so
I would like just add that before in the previous round table, we talked about territorial diagnosis. And so it's like a methodology that we developed just for this reason, because we don't agree that urban agriculture fits everywhere. So we have to did diagnosis and analyze if the urban agriculture project the best project for those spaces available. Yeah.
Did you want to jump in there?
Well, actually, just for our guests to put it in the context of Toronto being a city of ravines, that's sort of the way Toronto is conceived of. So the importance of those natural areas, and so the debate is definitely happening here. Is do we need to manage every space, or can we leave spaces quote unquote wild? You could critique that a lot, but so yes, just to say that debate does go on here as well, where because Toronto is a city of ravines.
And are you considering, as they are in Paris, to I would say, I don't know how you would say it, deconcrete the streets and so on?
Yeah, there's some projects here like the DPave project. There's a defense project as well to take down fences. So there is a lot around these ideas of using quote unquote abandoned spaces, but how those spaces are, whether or not a space that is, for natural processes to happen unimpeded, would we call that abandoned? No, only from a, this again, human-centered point of view. Yeah.
We agree. No, we agree.
Well, talking about this tension in urban agriculture and biodiversity, we're talking a lot about ecological services, ecosystem services. But a question came up, which I think is kind of amusing, is in the results, people didn't mention food production as one of the benefits. So it was that kind of taken for granted that research had been done already, and you wanted to look, or is it just this is what you're presented today?
So maybe I didn't. I'll say because the slides weren't there when I was talking about it. Yes, we did measure the harvests of each crop, so we did have all the data, and it's as I don't know if we have been looking at some literature, and there's not a lot of information about the harvest and what you can expect from different kinds of urban agriculture for food production. So that's part of the work of the Few Media project. It was really to measure food, also food production, and it was important for us. And as Christine said, we've always said that even if we put all the roofs of Paris in production for fruits and vegetables, we wouldn't be able to produce more than 10% of all the fruit and vegetables consumed by the city. So, but however, for some people, it's not important at the city level, but for some people, it might be just, it couldn't be doing without. So it's kind of what you have to take into account.
I would like just add that some people stress the importance of the quality of food. Quality because they grow on their own, so it's good for this reason, and also they can choose which plant they can grow. And I think that the quality aspect and the possibility to grow their favorite food or the food that are very expensive in the market. So like something like some kind of tomatoes, for example, that it's really expensive and they are not good also. And so I think these aspects are also stressed.
So we're getting to the last few minutes here, and I thought I wanted to end up with an eternal popular topic here in Toronto. Lorraine's laughing because she knows what I'm talking about. The question is, are urban farmers and gardeners keeping livestock? And if so, what types? And please speak about regulations. Are you keeping livestock, so like keeping chickens for eggs, for that kind of thing, goats for milk or for grazing? So yeah, if you have just quickly, if there are regulations.
We do have some livestock in Paris. I would say mainly for pasture. They're using sheep, no goats, they are only sheep, to graze on the suburbs, on the périphérique, which is the circular roadway, or on university. But that's most of it. We do have some pigs, some hens, and that's kind of it. And oh yeah, bees. Yeah, we do have lots of bees. All right. Yeah, I always forget bees. And I think we have some fishes also on top of the opera. And yeah, and oh yeah, chicken. A lot of chicken. Small pieces of small flocks of chicken. And yeah, j'ai perdu I lost my idea. I'm sorry. I was thinking.
Well, I also wanted to ask, are there policies that actually allow it, or is there an absence of regulations that prevent people?
It's more, yeah, well, there is a regulation, so you have to safety health to declare all your livestock to the vets anyway. But it's just not lots of things. It's more about what you put on the market. So it's, I guess, if you eat it yourself, if you eat your own eggs, there's no trouble about it. Yes, I remember what I wanted to say. It's that since we were talking about revival of market gardening, French market gardening and its lessons, there's something that I think we might have to look into, is that Paris was, from the Middle Ages until the 18th century, was also had a huge livestock production of pigeons. People ate pigeons. And I know that's why we have so many different colors of pigeons. It's because there was different races and breeds. So maybe we should just look into it. Feed them good food, and then we can eat pigeons.
Well, maybe if we ate more pigeons, then they would be making less of a mess in the city. There wouldn't be as many of them. Okay, well, I think that will wrap up for now. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining. Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, Emma, for joining us.